So, sometimes, every now and then, filmmakers make single creative decisions that are undeniably unhinged. Artistic choices which are tough for anyone else but them to fully explain or justify. From peculiar aesthetic choices which were arguably more distracting than appealing, to insane conceptual decisions, wild casting picks, and everything else in between, nobody can accuse these movies of just doing the safest, most boring thing possible. I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture, and here are 10 recent movies that made insane choices. Number 10. Lens flares everywhere in the Lost Lands. While few were likely expecting much from Paul W.S. Anderson's new dark fantasy film in the Lost Lands, even with source material penned by the great George R.R. Martin, Anderson basically went above and beyond to make the film as visually garish as possible. Even if you can forgive how relentlessly plastic and fake the digital backgrounds throughout the movie actually look, Anderson's big aesthetic faux pas was to drown almost every frame of the movie in an eyesore-inducing number of lens flares. Yeah, that's right, JJ. Paul's come for your crown. Pretty much every single light source featured in the film gives off a prominent flare, and given that many scenes contain dozens of lights, we end up with the screen basically flooded with all these distracting artifacts. It's enough to make J.J. Abrams' infamous penchant for lens flares seem positively restrained, and is a strong enough choice that it's far more likely to be remembered than anything that actually happens in the film story. Never, ever do this again, Paul. Please. Number 9. Robbie Williams is a chimp. Better man. Oh, to be a fly on the wall when filmmaker Michael Gracie pitched a biopic of Robbie Williams which saw the pop music legend portrayed by a digital chimpanzee. Given that generic biopics of beloved musicians are an easy sell to audiences in the conservative current cinema landscape, and let's be honest, are pretty easy to construct badly and people will go see them anyway, it's completely unhinged to ignore the more obvious commercial path forward and instead spend $110 million on one of the most peculiar biopics of all time. But to be clear, Better Man was also quite brilliant. A gamble that absolutely paid off artistically, even if it was, unsurprisingly, a box office flop due to both its bonkers execution, presumably, and Williams' general obscurity outside of Europe. Which, guys, come on. That late 90s, early 2000s Robbie era? Missed out. The whole chimp concept, which could so easily have been a mere attention-seeking gimmick, actually works shockingly well in underlining Williams' anxieties as both a performer and as a human being. It's just totally insane that anyone, anywhere greenlit the idea with the apparent confidence that it could possibly turn a profit. Time will be kind to Better Man as more audiences discover it on streaming, but from a business perspective, its existence is a complete head-scratcher. Number 8. The totally unconvincing romance. Love Hurts. Love Hurts is a new action comedy which came and went in a flash this past Valentine's Day, starring recent Oscar winner Ke Huy Quan as Marvin Gable, a real estate agent whose former life as a hitman comes back to haunt him. Ah, that old chestnut again. On paper, it certainly seems like a fine enough role to showcase Kwan's well-honed action chops and experience as both an actor and as a stunt choreographer, but it also falls apart due to the movie's ill-advised romantic subplot. Marvin's love interest throughout the film is a young lawyer called Rose Carlyle, played by Ariana DeBose, yet this chalk and cheese pairing just doesn't work at all. Even if you can ignore the fact that Kwan is almost 20 years older than DeBose, and let's be honest, you probably won't be able to, the two just don't really have any chemistry at all. It's never believable in even a single scene that these two people are romantically entangled, which could have been remedied by either recasting one of the two roles or rewriting them to be friends rather than lovers, which is what they feel like for the runtime anyway. It's not the only problem with the movie, but the bungled romance is definitely its most off-putting element. Number 7. The giant moon? A working man. Jason Statham's new action flick, A Working Man, is a pretty forgettable romp. Not as fun as his prior collaboration with David Ayer, The Beekeeper, while basically taking itself just a smidge too seriously. But there is one flourish which left audiences howling with confused laughter. Late in the film, as the state's action hero Levin Cade races through the night to rescue his boss's kidnapped daughter, an absolutely gigantic moon can be seen in the back of the frame. Throughout this prolonged nighttime sequence, a moon that looks like it's moments away from crashing into Earth Melancholia style can be seen, and in turn distracts just about everyone from actually paying attention to the action taking place in the foreground. Like, Staith should be going, "What the bloody hell is that moon about?" instead of just driving along and fighting bad guys. Everyone should be stopping and looking at the sky right now. This is one of those oddball artistic decisions that will likely only make sense to Ayer. It doesn't make physical sense, and yet a VFX team was paid to create the effect regardless. The rest of the film is enough of a nothing burger that, like in The Lost Lands' lens flares, it's probably the single part you're likely to remember. Number 6. The ridiculous casting. Uglies. Casting is everything, and Netflix's recent adaptation of Scott Westerfeld's young adult novel Uglies was doomed the moment they decided to cast the movie in this particular way. Given that the film's dystopian central concept revolves around quote-unquote ugly people who are prettified at the age of 16, many took umbrage with the ensemble cast being played by conventionally good-looking people like Joey King, Keith Powers, Chase Stokes, and Brianne Zhu. But in fairness, that's not really the problem here. The entire point of the story is that the protagonists are chasing impossible and unreasonable beauty standards, so it doesn't really matter what they look like at the outset. The issue is that the actors are just way too old to be playing 15 and 17-year-olds. Joey King is pushing it at 25 years of age, but the real kicker is Chase Stokes, who at 32 years old is playing someone literally half his age. The casting is just ridiculous enough that the already flimsy narrative is downright impossible to take seriously as anything but an unintentional farce. While it absolutely makes sense that Netflix might want to cast actors who are 18 or older to avoid dealing with child labor laws, they really ended up tossing believability right out the window from the jump. Number 5. 2 Jim Carreys. Sonic the Hedgehog 3. When Jim Carrey was first cast to play Dr. Robotnik in the original Sonic movie, few could appreciate just how perfect that casting choice would turn out to be, the part giving Carrey a ripe opportunity to revisit the rubber-faced, mug-happy style of acting which made him a megastar in the 1990s. But franchise director Jeff Fowler ultimately decided that there's no such thing as too much Jim Carrey, and so, for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, had him play 2 roles, Dr. Robotnik and his grandfather, Professor Gerald Robotnik. 2 Robotniks, Jeremy. 2? That's insane. Given that Carrey originally teased that he might retire after Sonic 2, Fowler evidently needed to pull out the big guns, and a fat paycheck, naturally, to lure him back. And for an actor of Carrey's go-for-broke adventurousness, it's easy to appreciate how he'd relish the opportunity to play opposite himself, and he very clearly did. 2 Carreys tearing it up could have so easily unbalanced the film, and yet, from all anecdotes that I hear from the Sonic fans in the What Culture office, this one ended up being the best of the bunch. Number 4. The 215-minute runtime. The Brutalist. Even though the discourse around movie runtimes feels incredibly tired in 2025, like, guys, come on, your attention spans can be saved, I promise you. There are certainly some fringe exceptions to that, and somehow outdoing Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon from 2023, which clocked in at a beefy 206 minutes, all of which were amazing, Brady Corbet's recent The Brutalist ran for 215 minutes. But perhaps even odder than the movie running over 3.5 hours in length is that it actually arrived in cinemas with a 15-minute intermission included within that runtime. Now, naturally, The Brutalist's epic length and its uncommon use of a built-in intermission sparked more surprise and discussion than the actual content of the movie itself. Some dismissing it as a feat of filmmaking indulgence, while others praised Courbet for giving audiences a short break to digest the movie's first half and, I don't know, go for a big wee. It remains a polarizing aspect of the film, albeit not one that prevented it from winning 3 Oscars and grossing $50 million worldwide against a mere $9.6 million budget. Go The Brutalist. Number 3. It's secretly a musical. Sinners. Ryan Coogler's Sinners is brilliant and is one of the boldest and most impressive films of the year so far. But not merely content to deliver a technically audacious historical vampire film, Coogler went one further and secretly made it a quasi-musical. Music is an extremely important part of the movie, given that Sinners is primarily set in and around a juke joint and deals with themes of black artistry and ownership, and Coogler consequently relishes every opportunity to stop the action and focus on the songs. Several of Sinners' most memorable scenes are elaborately choreographed musical performances, from a roof-raising turn by guitarist Sammy, played by Miles Caton, to an Irish jig from villainous vampire Remick, played by Jack O'Connell. Sure, characters aren't spontaneously breaking out into song like a conventional musical, but given the vampire aspect of the plot doesn't fully kick in until close to the 3rd act, it's fair to say that Sinners is as much a musical as it is a vampire film. And yeah, it was a huge risk on Coogler's part to inject such prolonged musical set pieces into an already sort of risky big-budget genre film, and the fact we're calling this thing risky in 2025 shows how starved we've been at the movies for so long now, but damn if he didn't just knock it out of the park. So happy this one to shred things up at the box office. It's just great to see. Number 2. Russell Crowe's cheese subplot, Land of Bad. Now, if you can forgive its rather silly title, Land of Bad is actually a really good action war movie, following a Delta Force unit as they fight for survival while guided by a drone pilot, Eddie Grimm, played by Russell Crowe. If I were to describe it, it would be like if Black Hawk Down met Top Gun Maverick. Nauseatingly violent and raw at times, but with an emotional grounding that keeps you going. Now, for the bulk of its runtime, the movie is a standard yet decently crafted romp, yet takes a wildly ridiculous left turn late in the day when Grimm is taken off drone duty just as Sergeant Kinney, played by Liam Hemsworth, is kidnapped by enemy forces. Unable to help Kinney, Grimm decides to go about his day, which includes going grocery shopping for his heavily pregnant vegan wife, who has very specific dietary requirements. And so, Kinney's brutal imprisonment is cross-cut with a deeply bizarre, oddly prolonged sequence where Crowe inquires about and purchases, and I quote, artisanal tree nut fermented plant-based cashew and tahini smoked vegan new cheese, before making contact with Kinney once again and saving the day. It goes on for a bafflingly long time, almost as though the filmmakers simply told Russell Crowe to improv his way around the supermarket and have some fun with it, which is precisely what he does. It's a deeply weird detour, though it at least injects some welcome quirkiness into a generally seriously minded movie, and also amplifies the upsetting contrast of life as we know it, warfare, and how the two aren't as distant as we may like to think. And number 1. Basically the entire movie. The end. If you thought films like The Brutalist and Sinners were bold commercial moves, well, they've got nothing on the end. The narrative feature debut of documentary filmmaker Joshua Oppenheimer, who is behind The Act of Killing and The Luck of Silence. The plot for The End revolves around a wealthy family who are living in a lavish underground bunker following a worldwide environmental calamity. But this is no mere ordinary post-apocalyptic movie. It also happens to be a musical. Just not a particularly good one. More to the point, it's a musical comprised of songs inspired by the golden age of Hollywood. That is to say, there is a distinctly old-timey vibe to the tunes, which are seemingly intentionally designed to be anything but catchy. On top of that, most of the singing was recorded live, a majorly risky notion given that the majority of the cast, led by Tilda Swinton, George McKay, and Michael Shannon, aren't classically trained singers. Oh, and it's also 149 minutes long, just to put a little old cherry on top of that cake for you. So, on one hand, it's fair to respect Oppenheimer's commitment to making precisely the movie that he wanted to. But on the other, it's proven wildly polarizing with critics and audiences alike, who've questioned just about every aspect of its conception and execution.